I sold the house. I disappeared without warning anyone. I left the city where I had lived for 40 years, and I started a new life in a small apartment where no one could control me anymore. From the window of this quiet apartment, I sometimes look at the street below and think about everything that happened. The silence here feels different. It is peaceful. No shouting, no manipulation, no whispers behind closed doors. For the first time in years, I feel safe. But people who hear my story often ask the same question. Why would a 68-year-old mother run away from her own son? The answer is simple, because my son stopped being my son. He became something else entirely. He became a predator. And the woman he married, Kesha, along with the family she brought into our lives, turned my home into a trap. I know some people will say what I did was extreme. Some will even say it was cruel. But when you reach a point where your own family sees you as nothing more than an obstacle, standing between them and your property, survival becomes the only thing that matters. And I chose survival. For years, I ignored the signs. I convinced myself everything was normal. That maybe I was being overly sensitive. After all, families argue sometimes. Relationships change. But deep inside me, there was always a small voice whispering that something wasn't right. And 3 months ago, that whisper turned into a scream. That was the moment everything began to unravel. It started on a quiet Tuesday afternoon. The sky outside was gray and heavy, the kind of day where time seems to move slowly. I was in the kitchen preparing dinner when Marcus walked in. My son had lived with me since he married Kesha 5 years earlier. They said it was temporary, just until they saved enough money to buy their own place. 5 years later, they were still there. At first, I didn't mind. I loved having Marcus close to me. After his father died when he was only 8 years old, it had always been just the two of us. I worked double shifts for years to raise him. I paid for his education. I sacrificed vacations, hobbies, and even friendships just to make sure he had everything he needed. And when he married Kesha, I truly believed our family was growing. But from the very beginning, Kesha never liked me. She didn't say it directly. She never needed to. It was in the way she looked at me, the way she spoke to me with forced politeness, the way she sighed whenever I entered a room. To her, I wasn't Marcus's mother. I was an inconvenience. But Marcus seemed happy with her, and that was enough for me. At least that's what I told myself. That Tuesday afternoon, Marcus leaned against the kitchen counter while I stirred a pot on the stove. I recognized the expression on his face immediately. It was the look he always had when he wanted something. Over the years, I had seen that look many times. Mama, can you lend me some money? Mama, we just need to stay here a few more months. Mama, Kesha is stressed. Please try not to bother her. Always requests, always favors, but rarely gratitude. Still, when you are a mother, you learn to smile through everything. I turned toward him. Marcus, baby, what is it? He didn't look directly at me when he spoke. Mama, I need your credit cards. I frowned slightly. My credit cards? All 3 of them, he added casually. For a moment, I thought I had misunderstood. What do you need all 3 for? He shrugged. Kesha and I have some important purchases this week. We'll give them back on Monday. Something inside me tightened. Marcus had borrowed a card before, once or twice in emergencies, but never all 3. Still, I pushed the doubt aside. After all, he was my son. All right, I said quietly. I took my wallet from the counter and handed him the cards. Marcus grabbed them quickly. No, thank you. No explanation, just a quick nod before walking toward the hallway. See you later, Mama. As he left, I heard him whisper something to Kesha. Then I heard her laugh. It was a short laugh, but something about it made my stomach twist. For a moment, I stood there in the kitchen holding the empty wallet, and a strange feeling passed through me. The feeling that I had just made a terrible mistake. The next few days were strange. Marcus and Kesha barely spoke to me. They left the house early every morning and returned late at night. Whenever I asked where they had been, their answers were vague. Running errands, taking care of some things. Don't worry about it, Mama. But something didn't feel right. One evening, I tried to check my credit card activity online. The website gave me an error message. I tried again. Another error. The next morning, I called the bank. The representative told me everything looked normal, but the uneasy feeling remained. Something was happening, and I couldn't see it. On Friday night, Marcus knocked on my bedroom door. Mama? Come in. He stood in the doorway, already dressed, as if he were about to leave. Kesha and I are going out of town for the weekend, he said. Some friends invited us to a cabin. That surprised me. Marcus rarely took vacations. When will you be back? Maybe Wednesday, he said quickly. I nodded. All right, have a good time. He turned to leave. No hug, no kiss on the forehead like he used to give me when he was younger. Just silence. When the door closed behind him, I sat alone on the edge of my bed. And for the first time in years, I wondered something that frightened me. When did my son become a stranger? The next morning, the house was unusually quiet. Marcus and Kesha had already left. They hadn't said goodbye. They hadn't left a note. Nothing, just silence. I made myself a cup of coffee and sat in the living room. But the quiet didn't feel peaceful. It felt heavy, uncomfortable, like the house itself knew something was wrong. To distract myself, I began cleaning. Cleaning has always been my way of calming my nerves. I washed dishes. I vacuumed the living room. I organized the hallway closet. Eventually, I found myself standing outside Marcus and Kesha's bedroom. Normally, I respected their privacy. I never entered without permission. But that day something pushed me forward. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was instinct. I turned the doorknob. The room smelled strongly of Kesha's expensive perfume. I walked to the window and opened it to let fresh air in. Then I turned to leave. That was when I noticed the phone. It was lying on the desk near the bed. Marcus's old phone. He had replaced it 2 months earlier with a new one, but apparently he still used this one for something. The screen was lit. Notifications filled the display. I hesitated. I knew I shouldn't look, but something inside me insisted. My hand reached for the phone before my mind could stop it. There was no passcode. Marcus had always been careless with things like that. At the top of the screen, I saw several notifications from a messaging app. They all came from the same group chat. The name of the group made my heart skip. Kesha's family. My finger hovered over the notification. I knew opening it would be an invasion of privacy. But the uneasy feeling inside me was stronger than my hesitation. I tapped the screen, and in that moment, my life changed forever. The chat was filled with hundreds of messages. I scrolled to the most recent ones. The first message I saw was from Kesha. "We're already at the airport. Marcus is nervous the old woman might notice something." I froze. The old woman? My hands began to shake as I kept reading. Patricia, Kesha's mother, had replied, "Good thing your mother-in-law is so naive." Another message appeared from Kesha's father. "That house will be ours before she realizes what's happening." My breathing became shallow. I kept scrolling. And then I saw Marcus's message. "I used Mama's 3 credit cards. Together, they have almost $20,000 available." $20,000. My heart sank. But that wasn't even the worst part. Not even close, because as I kept reading the conversation, I realized something far more terrifying. They weren't just spending my money. They were planning to take everything I owned, my house, my independence, my entire life, and the person helping them do it was my own son. For several minutes, I just sat there on the edge of Marcus and Kesha's bed, staring at the phone in my hands. My heart was beating so hard that it felt like it might break through my chest. Part of me wanted to put the phone down immediately, walk out of the room, and pretend I had never seen those messages. Pretend none of it was real. But another part of me, a stronger part, knew that I had already crossed the point of no return. If they were planning something behind my back, I needed to know everything. Every lie, every detail, every step of their plan. My fingers trembled as I continued scrolling through the group chat. The messages went back weeks, then months. At first, it was just casual conversations between Kesha and her parents. But slowly the tone of the messages began to change. The moment that truly shattered my heart came when I found a conversation from 2 weeks earlier. Patricia, Kesha's mother, had written a long message. "I spoke with the lawyer again today. He says if Marcus can convince his mother to sign a power of attorney, the process will be very easy." My breathing stopped. Power of attorney. Even I knew what that meant. It meant giving someone legal control over your finances, your property, and your decisions. Kesha replied almost immediately, "But my mother-in-law is perfectly lucid. Mama, she manages everything herself. We can't just invent a reason." Then Patricia responded again. "Honey, you don't have to invent anything. All elderly people have moments of confusion, forgetfulness, emotional instability. You just need to document it." Another message appeared from Kesha's father, Raymond. "I've seen it happen before. Families record videos of the elderly acting forgetful or emotional, present it to the court as evidence that the person cannot manage their own affairs anymore." My hands went cold. They weren't just talking about my money. They were planning to take control of my entire life. Kesha typed again. "So we just need proof?" Patricia answered. "Exactly. Record small moments. When she forgets something. When she gets emotional. When she gets confused. Gather enough clips and the lawyer can present it as cognitive decline." Raymond added another message. "Once the court believes she can't manage her assets, Marcus becomes the legal decision maker. Marcus, my son, my own child, the one I had raised with love and sacrifice. He would legally control everything I owned. I scrolled down quickly, desperate to see what Marcus had said. His response appeared a few lines later. I don't know if I feel comfortable doing that to my mama. For a brief moment, a tiny spark of hope appeared inside me. Maybe Marcus still had a conscience. Maybe he would refuse. But that hope didn't last long. Kesha replied almost immediately, Babe, you're not doing anything to hurt her. You're helping her. Think about it logically. That house is too big for her. She can't maintain it forever. Another message followed. And once we have control, we can move her somewhere smaller, somewhere safer. Safer. The word felt like poison. Because I knew exactly what they meant. They weren't talking about a smaller apartment. They were talking about a retirement facility. A place where they could leave me. And forget about me. Marcus didn't answer for several minutes. Then his message appeared. I just don't want her to think I'm betraying her. Kesha responded quickly. She won't think that if you explain it the right way. Another message popped up from Patricia. Tell her it's temporary. Tell her it's just paperwork to make things easier in emergencies. Raymond added one more comment. Old people trust their children blindly. She won't question it. My vision blurred with tears. Blind trust. They were right about one thing. I had trusted Marcus blindly my entire life, and now that trust was being used against me. I continued scrolling through the conversation. The messages became even worse. A week ago, Kesha had written something that made my stomach twist with anger. Today, my mother-in-law asked if she could come with us to the festival next month. Patricia replied. And what did you say? Kesha answered with a laughing emoji. I told her it's a couples-only event. Then she added another message. She looked so disappointed. It was almost funny. Funny. My loneliness had been entertainment for them. Patricia responded. Good. Keep creating distance. Raymond added. Isolation makes things easier. Kesha replied again. Exactly. The fewer friends she has around, the less likely anyone will question the situation. My chest felt tight. I suddenly remembered all the moments during the past year when Marcus and Kesha had slowly pulled away from me. The family dinners that stopped happening. The invitations they stopped giving. The conversations that ended whenever I entered the room. It wasn't coincidence. It had been a strategy. A deliberate plan to isolate me. To make sure no one would defend me when the time came. Then I saw another message that completely shattered me. It was from Patricia. Altha is the perfect type for this situation. My name. Seeing it written there made my stomach drop. Patricia continued. She doesn't have many friends. She doesn't go out much. Her only close family was her sister, and she's gone. Another message appeared. Marcus is her entire world. Raymond replied. That gives us the advantage. Kesha sent the final message in that conversation. Exactly why I chose Marcus. The words burned in my mind. I chose him because his mother is easy to manipulate. My entire body started shaking. This woman hadn't fallen in love with my son. She had selected him, like someone selecting an opportunity. Because of me. Because of my house. Because of my loneliness. Because she knew I would never fight back. For a long moment I couldn't breathe. All the memories of the last 5 years suddenly made sense. The cold smiles. The fake politeness. The way she slowly pushed Marcus away from me. It had all been intentional. A carefully planned manipulation. And Marcus had allowed it to happen. I kept scrolling through the chat. There were messages about their trip to Miami. Pictures of luxury hotel rooms. Reservations at expensive restaurants. All paid for with my credit cards. In one message, Marcus wrote proudly, Between the 3 cards, we have almost $20,000 available. Patricia responded with excitement. Perfect. We're going to enjoy this vacation. Raymond added. Let the old woman pay for it. I dropped the phone onto the bed. For several minutes, I just sat there, staring at the wall. My mind was spinning. My heart felt like it had been crushed. But something else was growing inside me too. Something stronger than sadness. Anger. Not the loud, explosive kind of anger, but a quiet, cold anger that slowly spreads through your entire body. For years, I had sacrificed everything for Marcus. I had worked exhausting hours so he could have a good education. I had given him my home when he needed a place to live. I had trusted him with my money. And in return, he had allowed his wife and her family to treat me like a helpless old woman waiting to be discarded. Tears rolled down my face again. But this time they weren't tears of helplessness. They were tears of realization. For the first time in months, my mind felt clear. Very clear. Because I finally understood something important. They believed I was weak. They believed I was naive. They believed I would never fight back. But they were wrong. Very wrong. Slowly I picked up the phone again. If they thought I was too foolish to notice what they were doing, then I would let them continue believing that. I started taking screenshots of every message in the group chat, every conversation, every plan, every insult, every piece of evidence. The screenshots filled the phone's gallery. Then I sent them all to my own email address. If they tried to delete the messages later, it wouldn't matter. I had proof, cold, undeniable proof. When I finally finished, the sun was already setting outside the window. The room had grown darker. For the first time since reading the messages, I stood up. My legs felt weak, but my mind was stronger than ever. I walked slowly out of their bedroom and closed the door behind me. The house was silent, but now the silence felt different. Before it had felt heavy, oppressive. Now it felt like the calm before a storm. I walked to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. My reflection in the window looked different somehow. Older maybe, but also stronger. For years I had been the kind of mother who sacrificed everything for her child. The kind of woman who forgave every mistake, who ignored every insult. But that woman no longer existed. The people I had trusted most had shown me exactly who they really were. And now I had a choice to make. I could confront them. I could scream. I could cry. I could beg Marcus to remember who I was. But deep down, I knew something important. None of those things would change anything. Marcus had already made his choice. So now, it was time for me to make mine. And the decision I was about to make would change everything. Because if Marcus and Kesha thought they were the only ones capable of making plans, they were about to learn how wrong they were. Very soon, I would show them something they never expected. That the stupid old woman they laughed about in their messages was far more capable than they ever imagined. And when the time came, they wouldn't see it coming. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in my bed staring at the ceiling while the truth replayed in my mind again and again. Every message, every insult, every plan they had made behind my back. For years, I had believed that my son would always protect me. That no matter how complicated life became, the bond between a mother and her child would remain unbreakable. But the messages I had read proved something painful. Marcus was no longer the boy I had raised. He had chosen a different side, and now I had to choose mine. For the first time in my life, I stopped thinking like a mother and started thinking like someone who needed to survive. If I confronted them, they would deny everything. If I accused them, they would call me paranoid. If I cried, they would pretend to comfort me while continuing their plan behind my back. No, I couldn't give them that opportunity. Instead, I decided to do something they would never expect. I would disappear from their game completely. But before I left, I needed to make sure of one thing. They would never be able to hurt me again. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. The house was still quiet. Marcus and Keisha were thousands of miles away enjoying their vacation in Miami. A vacation they believed I was paying for. I walked into the kitchen and made myself a cup of coffee. For the first time in years, I felt strangely calm, not happy, not relaxed, but clear. My mind was focused on one goal: protecting myself. After finishing my coffee, I picked up the phone and called the bank. When the representative answered, I spoke calmly. I need to report my credit card stolen. There was a brief pause on the line. I'm sorry to hear that, ma'am. When were they stolen? 3 days ago, I replied. Within minutes, the bank canceled all 3 cards. The representative assured me that any suspicious charges would be investigated. I thanked her and hung up the phone. Somewhere in Miami, Marcus and Kesha were probably ordering breakfast in an expensive hotel. Very soon their cards would stop working. But that was only the beginning. The next step was more important. My house. The house they believed would soon belong to them. The house where Marcus had grown up. The house my sister Catherine had left to me when she passed away. That house had always been my safe place. But now I realized something painful. As long as Marcus and Kesha lived there, it would never truly be my home again. I needed a solution. So I called someone I hadn't spoken to in several years. My old friend Linda. Linda had worked as a real estate agent for more than 20 years. When she answered the phone, she sounded surprised to hear from me. Altha, it's been ages. How are you? I took a deep breath. Linda, I need to sell my house. There was a moment of silence. Sell it? That seems sudden. It is, I said quietly. But I need it done quickly. Linda asked a few questions about the property. When I finished explaining, she spoke again. You know this neighborhood is very popular right now. Houses here are selling fast. How fast? I asked. If we price it correctly, maybe a few weeks. I thought about Marcus and Kesha returning from their vacation. Weeks might be too long. Is there any way to sell it faster? Linda hesitated before answering. If you're willing to accept a slightly lower price, I could probably find a buyer within days. Days. That sounded perfect. Do it, I said. The following week moved faster than I expected. Linda arranged everything. Photographs of the house, listings, private showings. I made sure Marcus and Kesha were still enjoying their vacation. While all of this was happening, they sent me a few short messages during the week. Hey mama, everything good at home? Don't forget to water the plants. Their messages were casual, normal, as if nothing had changed, as if they hadn't been plotting against me for months. I replied politely. Short answers, nothing suspicious. They had no idea that their entire plan was collapsing while they relaxed on a beach. 3 days later, Linda called me again. I have an offer, she said. My heart began beating faster. A serious buyer? Yes, a young couple. They want the house immediately. And the price? It's slightly below market value, but still very good. I didn't hesitate. I'll take it. The paperwork happened quickly. Within a week, the house officially had new owners. The money from the sale was transferred into a new bank account that Marcus knew nothing about. When I saw the final balance on the screen, I felt something strange, relief. 40 years of memories had been tied to that house. But now it was simply an asset, and it had saved me. The next step was my departure. I packed quietly. Not everything, just the things that mattered. Photographs, important documents, a few personal belongings. Everything else stayed behind. Furniture, decorations, all the things Marcus and Kesha believed would eventually belong to them. I left them exactly where they were, for the new owners to deal with. Then I rented a small apartment in another city. Nothing fancy, just a quiet place where I could start again. When moving day arrived, I stood in the empty living room of the house one last time. Memories filled every corner. Marcus running through the hallway as a child. Family dinners in the kitchen. Holiday decorations near the fireplace. For a moment, sadness washed over me. But then I remembered the messages. The old woman. Easy to manipulate. That house will be ours. The sadness disappeared. I picked up my suitcase and walked out the front door, without looking back. Marcus and Kesha returned from Miami 2 days later. I know exactly what happened because Marcus called me 27 times that day. I didn't answer. Later, he sent a message. Mama, where are you? Another message followed. Why are the credit cards canceled? Then another. Mama, someone is in the house. Yes, the new owners had moved in that morning. The final message came that evening. Mama, what is going on? For a long moment, I stared at the screen. Then I finally replied, Marcus, the house has been sold. A few minutes passed. Then my phone rang immediately. I didn't answer, but he kept sending messages. What do you mean sold? You can't do that. That's my house too. I read the messages quietly, and for the first time in months, I smiled. Finally, I sent one last message. No, Marcus, it was never yours. Then I turned off the phone. Now I live in this small apartment. It's not as big as my old house, but it is peaceful. Every morning I wake up without fear. No whispers behind closed doors. No manipulation. No one waiting for me to make a mistake. Sometimes I think about Marcus. I wonder if he regrets what he did. But then I remember something important. A mother can forgive many things. But betrayal like that changes something forever. I didn't destroy my family. They did. All I did was refuse to be their victim. And if there is one thing I have learned from this experience, it is this. No matter how old you are, no matter how alone you feel, you always have the right to protect yourself. You always have the right to choose dignity over sacrifice. And sometimes, saving yourself is the bravest decision you can ever make.